Poppy Nozawa sat rigidly in the antiseptic waiting room of Los Angeles Memorial Hospital, her palms pressed so hard against her knees that she could feel her fingernails bleed beneath the thin cotton of her skirt. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds in golden slashes, a cruel reminder that life, for everyone else, continued to orbit in peaceful rhythm even as hers fractured on the anvil of her daughter's violence. Gone were the tender moments Poppy had once shared with Luna. Bedtime stories that ended in giggles, whispered I love yous that warmed her heart, proud photographs pinned to the refrigerator of a girl she had raised with every ounce of love she possessed. Now Luna lay inside, hours after a shooting at Forrester Creations' art studio left 3 people wounded: Steffi Forrester, Finn's young wife, Liam Spencer, her grandson-in-law, and Luna herself, who had been grazed by the bullet she'd fired in a moment of blind desperation. The acrid scent of sanitizer mingled with Poppy's suffocating guilt as she replayed the call that had shattered her afternoon, Luna's trembling voice on the other end, the metallic rattle of sirens close by, the shrill bark of paramedics hauling her unconscious daughter into an ambulance. Poppy had dropped the phone and fled the house, stepping over the anguished sobs of her husband, George, a man stoic in every crisis except those that threatened his bloodline. And driven at reckless speed through gridlocked streets, her mind shuddered against the rising storm of shame and terror. Now every whispered consultation between doctors, every footstep in the hallway, stabbed at her with knives of remorse. How had she failed to see the darkness that gathered in Luna's heart? Why had she trusted Luna's reassurances that her struggles were behind her? Poppy's vision blurred as the sliding doors to the hallway whooshed open. Luna's trauma surgeon, cheeks grave beneath the surgical mask, beckoned her forward. Poppy rose, as though pulled by a magnet of dread, and stepped into the operating suite where Luna lay on a gurney, her pale face framed by a tangle of dark hair matted with blood. The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. Luna's wound was superficial, he said. The graze to her shoulder would heal with time, but her spirit, that was another matter entirely. She's awake but confused, the surgeon added, gesturing toward the recovery area. She's disoriented, keeps asking about the people she shot. You might want to be prepared for hard questions. Poppy's knees threatened to buckle, but she clenched her jaw and nodded. As the doctor departed, Poppy moved to Luna's side, brushing back damp curls and brushing her cheek with a trembling finger. Luna's eyes fluttered open, wide, terrified, haunted. For a moment neither spoke. The only sound was the beeping of monitors and the distant thump of paramedics rushing other casualties through the bay doors. Then Luna's voice, barely a whisper, broke the silence. Mom, Mom, what have I done? Poppy swallowed her own pain to cradle Luna's hand, her own tears falling freely now. My sweet girl, she murmured, I'm here. We'll face this together. Luna's eyes filled with fresh terror. They were going to ruin me, Mom. They were going to, her voice caught. Poppy knew the story Luna would tell, her friend from art school. Steffi belittled and bullied her. Finn turned away from her. The entire Forrester, Logan dynasty conspired to crush her spirit. Poppy had listened sympathetically as Luna's insecurities festered into resentment, hypnotized by her own maternal love into believing that Luna's pain justified any action. Now, in this sterile room, she wondered if that maternal shelter had been a sin of omission, a deadly betrayal of justice. Poppy met Luna's gaze with a fierceness that startled them both. No one deserves to be shot, she said softly. No matter what they did. Luna stared at her mother's eyes, those pools of unwavering compassion, and for the first time the full weight of her crime landed on her young shoulders. Poppy squeezed her hand. We'll find a way forward, she promised, in the same breath cursing the very words. For if she sought to protect Luna, she also had an obligation to justice. To Steffi's family, to Liam's recovery, to the truth of what had happened under the canvas-strewn skylight of that art studio. In the tense hours that followed, Poppy became an unwitting fulcrum between two implacable forces, the call of a mother's heart to shield her child from punishment and the inexorable pull of moral law demanding accountability. As Luna drifted in and out of sedation, mumbling incoherent apologies, Poppy staggered from the hospital to consult with Luna's newly appointed attorney, Aline. Unflinching woman named Marjorie Heath who believed fiercely in rehabilitation but insisted Luna must face her actions in court. Marjorie outlined the likely charges: attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and the brutal reality of a justice system that did not bend for maternal tears. Poppy nodded numbly, feeling the divide cleave through her soul. How much was she willing to sacrifice to save her daughter from the full weight of the law? And at what cost to the family shattered by Luna's bullet? Meanwhile, the Forrester clan rallied around Steffi and Finn. Rich Forrester marched the corridors of the hospital, his jaw clenched as he demanded answers from Dr. Buckingham about surgical complications, while Taylor Hayes hovered at Steffi's bedside, offering silent prayers. Hope Logan secluded herself in a conference room at Spencer Publications to negotiate with legal counsel, preparing to counter any claim Luna's defense might weaponize about emotional abuse. Bill Spencer arrived, gaunt and furious, promising retribution equal to the pain his family had endured, and Poppy, observing from a distance, recognized the stakes. If she moved to defend Luna too bluntly, she would ignite a war with the most powerful families in Los Angeles, risking not only her daughter's freedom, but her own social standing and livelihood. For Poppy, every decision was a knife edge. Should she urge Luna to plead guilty, accept a plea deal that might shield her from a decade behind bars but brand her for life? Or persuade Luna to fight, to argue that her actions were the tragic outgrowth of enduring psychological torment at the hands of those she trusted? As night fell, Poppy returned to Luna's room, where the young woman lay staring at the ceiling. Poppy perched on the bedside stool and spoke with the clarity of anguished conviction. "You must own this," she said. "You must face the consequences. I will fight for you, but not to hide you. I will fight so they understand why you did it. And maybe then your sentence will be less harsh." Luna's lips trembled as tears carved tracks through the grease paint of her mascara. "I'm so scared," she whispered. "I can't lose you, Mom." Poppy's throat constricted. "You won't," she vowed. "I will stand with you every step. But you must take responsibility, Luna. Justice demands it." In that moment, Luna's fragile resolve crystallized. She nodded once, a shuddered motion that carried the weight of a lifetime's mistakes. Beyond the hospital's walls, the media had already spun the story into a moral tapestry of victim and villain. Sympathy for Luna's troubled past warred with outrage over the violence she unleashed. Opinion columns quibbled over whether she was the product of systemic neglect or a singularly dangerous individual. Poppy Nozawa, once content to live outside the public eye, now found her name on gossip blogs and news tickers as Luna's fierce mother, who refuses to abandon her daughter. Each mention made her stomach lurch with shame and defiance in equal measure. She wondered if she had the strength to navigate the coming storm. The next morning, Poppy sat beside Luna's bedside early, even before the doctors made rounds. She watched her daughter's chest rise and fall, listened to the faint metallic click of the intravenous pump, and vowed silently that she would do right by everyone, by Luna, by Steffi, by the truth. In doing so, she would tear down the walls between maternal love and moral justice, forging instead a path that recognized both the sanctity of a mother's bond and the necessity of accountability. As the early sunlight filtered in, illuminating dust, motes dancing over crisp white sheets, Poppy leaned down and kissed Luna's forehead. "We will get through this," she whispered. "Together and with honor." And in that vow, she sealed her own fate. She would stand in the courtroom as an advocate for Luna's redemption, but would also offer herself as witness to the pain her daughter had inflicted, so that any judgment passed might carry not only punishment, but also the possibility of healing. The divide between motherhood and justice would test her like never before, but Papi Nozawa, armed with unwavering love and sharpened conscience, would not flinch. Lee Finnegan's announcement came like a bolt of lightning striking the heart of Forrester Creations. At a hastily convened executive meeting in the gleaming glass-walled boardroom overlooking the Los Angeles skyline, she declared her unwavering support for Luna Nozawa, stunning everyone present and leaving Finn Spencer and Steffi Forrester reeling in disbelief. Moments earlier, Ridge Forrester had been speaking in measured tones about the urgent need to preserve the stability of both family and company, insisting that Luna's recent act of violence, her shooting in the Hayes Art Studio, could not go unpunished if Forrester Creations was to maintain its reputation for integrity and trust. Steffi leaned forward, her eyes blazing with righteous indignation as she recounted how Luna's reckless behavior had endangered the lives of Steffi herself, Finn, and even her own mother, Taylor Hayes, who had risked everything to negotiate a truce in the aftermath of Luna's betrayal. Finn, voice tight with barely restrained fury, had stood by his wife, demanding that Luna be held fully accountable in criminal court and stripped of any familial privileges, while the legal fallout threatened not only Luna's freedom, but also casting a shadow over hope for the future's partnership with the Forresters. And yet, when Lee rose from her seat, her sharp gaze sweeping over each stunned executive and family member, she did not address legal ramifications or corporate fallout. Instead, she spoke of compassion, redemption, and a mother's instinct to protect her child above all else. Lee's words tumbled out in a measured cadence, each one piercing the silence. She reminded them all how Luna had saved Steffi's life by drawing the shooter's attention and taking a graze wound herself. How she had displayed remorse and vulnerability in the recovery ward. How her own history of hardship had shaped her into a woman desperate to prove her worth. Lee's voice shook only once, when she confessed that she could not bear to see Luna, which she described as her protégé, the daughter she had mentored in art therapy, abandoned to a system that would only break her spirit further. She would stand by Luna at every legal hearing, Lee announced, and she expected Forrester Creations to provide financial backing for Luna's attorneys and psychological support to address the trauma that led to the shooting. The room went utterly still, the only sound the hum of the city below. Ridge's jaw clenched visibly. Steffi's hand went to her heart. Finn stared at his mother with a mixture of betrayal and anguish. Beneath Lee's calm exterior, however, roiled a storm of purpose. She believed fiercely in restorative justice, in offering Luna a path to healing rather than perpetual punishment. For Lee, the principles she had dedicated her life to as a nephrologist of nurturing the body in order to restore hope, extended beyond medicine and into the realm of human frailty. And now, faced with a choice between condemning her daughter of the heart and preserving the corporate and familial order, Lee chose Luna, fracturing the once solid alliance that bound the Forresters and Spencers in mutual protection. Finn was the first to speak, voice thick with emotion. "How could you, Mother? After everything Luna has done." His words were not merely a plea for logic, but an anguished cry against betrayal. Steffi's lips curled in derision as she rose, arms crossed tightly across her chest, her designer heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "We risk everything if we shield her," she said. "Our clients, our shareholders, our very name, everything depends on demonstrating that we do not tolerate violence." Even Hope, who had long sympathized with Luna's struggles, felt her heart sink as she watched Lee's calm resolve. She had never seen the woman who saved her husband's career by performing a life-saving nephrectomy act with such defiance toward corporate counsel. Hope had believed that beneath Lee's professional composure lay an unbreakable loyalty to her son, Finn. Now it seemed that loyalty was reserved only for her chosen cause. Ridge intervened, voice heavy with weary authority. "Lee, you're not just another mother advocating for her child. You hold executive power in this company. If we stand by that decision, we undermine our entire governance structure." He paused, gaze flicking between Steffi's cold glare and Finn's trembling frame. "We need unity, not division. We cannot let personal allegiances dictate corporate policy." Lee's lips pressed into a thin line. "And yet I see no unity in condemning someone who has already suffered enough. We cannot be a company, let alone a family, that discards a person at her lowest point." The standoff crackled with raw emotion, and for the first time in decades, Forrester Creations felt the tremor of internal collapse. The board members, caught between loyalty to the Forrester legacy and the practicalities of corporate crisis management, exchanged uneasy glances, the veneer of unanimous consensus shattered. Outside, the media had already caught wind of Lee's dramatic proclamation, and within hours the headlines blazed with sensational headlines. Forrester matriarch defies family to support shooting suspect. Forrester divided ASLI Finnegan picks sides. Social media roared with debate. Celebrities weighed in on talk shows, and the hashtag #SupportLee or hashtag Forrester Fallout trended nationwide. The next day, as the art studio lay cordoned off with yellow police tape and investigators combed for evidence, Forrester Creations stock dipped sharply, sending ripples through global markets. Designers whispered of abandoning the flagship line. Investors threatened legal suits. Key clients postponed orders, pending clarification of corporate governance. In the halls of the Spencer mansion, Bill Spencer rebuked Finn for failing to rein in his mother's radical impulses, while Hope expressed fear that the Logan, Forrester alliance would fracture irreparably. Taylor Hayes, torn between loyalty to her daughter and her bond with Lee, found herself mediating late-night calls that escalated into bitter arguments. Only Rich, whose lifetime of navigating forays into crisis had tempered him for such skirmishes, attempted to salvage what remained of cohesion, proposing an emergency family council at the Forrester estate, but even there, the cracks ran too deep. Finn, haunted by his mother's betrayal, retreated into himself, refusing to attend any corporate functions and confining himself to late-night shifts at the hospital, where he tried to lose himself in work even as his own personal crisis weighed on him. Steffi, bargaining her anguish into a fortress of ambition, threw herself into designing the next seasonal collection, her sketches darker, more aggressive, as if channeling her anger into molten fabrics. And Lee, emboldened by her stand, began to convene support groups for Luna's defense, recruiting mental health experts, trauma counselors, and even a celebrity advocate. Ensuring Luna's story would dominate public discourse and complicate any attempt to depict her solely as a violent offender. The struggle over Luna's fate became a proxy war for the very soul of Forrester Creations. Between punitive power and compassionate restoration, between upholding the brand's immaculate image and embracing the messy realities of human imperfection. Meanwhile, Luna, recovering in a private suite at the hospital where Finn had once set aside his surgical scrubs to comfort her, learned of Lee's allegiance and wept tears of relief and guilt in equal measure. She had not anticipated such fierce loyalty, visioning instead a trial that would see her shunned by both family and company. But Lee's unwavering support galvanized Luna, giving her the courage to face her actions head-on. Under the guidance of Lee's hand-picked legal team, Luna agreed to enter a restorative justice program rather than pursue a conventional plea deal. She arranged face-to-face meetings with Steffi, Finn, and even Liam, mediated by professional counselors, in which she expressed remorse, listened to the victims' perspectives, and offered to contribute to community outreach programs addressing youth mental health. Each encounter strained the bonds of anger and pain, forging tentative threads of understanding even as the larger battle for Forrester Creations' identity continued. Reports of these healing sessions filtered into the tabloids with breathless fascination, Luna's tears, Steffi's wary nods, Finn's stony expression softening with each passing moment. The public, initially outraged, found themselves swept up in the redemptive narrative, and Lee's gamble began to pay dividends. Social media sentiment shifted from condemnation to cautious sympathy, and some clients who had threatened to withdraw orders reconsidered in light of the company's new posture on corporate social responsibility. Nevertheless, the boardroom remained a crucible of conflict. Ridge, Steffi, Finn, and a splinter group of traditionalists demanded a formal vote to strip Lee of her executive powers, arguing that her personal convictions, however noble, had compromised the company's fiduciary duties. Lee countered by threatening to resign rather than capitulate, vowing to take her shareholding and philanthropic patrons with her if forced out. The impasse escalated into a legal standoff, with corporate attorneys parsing Byzantine bylaws and family lawyers drafting injunctions to preserve the status quo. Meanwhile, Luna's courtroom program proceeded alongside a high-stakes shareholders meeting that would determine whether Forrester Creations would embrace Lee's vision of restorative justice as a corporate value or return to a rigid code of zero tolerance for violence. When the meeting day arrived, the entire fashion world held its breath. Models and designers alike speculated on social media about what a decisive vote for Lee's approach might mean for the industry, while a defeat for Lee would signal a return to cutthroat conservatism. Inside the boardroom, tension crackled like static as Lee stepped forward to deliver her closing argument to the shareholders. She spoke of a company that dared to champion second chances, that recognized its power to transform lives beyond the runway, that would stand as a beacon for compassion in a world too often defined by unforgiving judgment. She reminded them of Forrester Creations' founding ethos, not merely to clothe the elite, but to inspire beauty born of human resilience. Across the table, Ridge rose to counter with a sober assessment of risk, of reputational harm, of the fiduciary duty owed to investors and employees. Behind him, Steffi watched with clenched fists, Finn's gaze locked on his mother with haunted intensity.